And this is our last model today, the cultural recreation and service model. It's another easy to do model where the biophysical assessments or mapping is done indirectly, just like the biodiversity and habitat conservation. And what is so important about the cultural and recreation service? It is under this service that we look at tourism, and a lot of countries are dependent on tourism for revenue generation. And for tourism to thrive and be very good, it's dependent on the nature of the ecosystem service. And thus, depending on how the ecosystem is sustainably managed, the revenue coming out of it as a result of tourists visiting that area will fluctuate. So you find where a country or a government has worked hard to preserve the biodiversity and certain habitats, they tend to attract a higher number of tourists, and then you find the government is able to generate good revenues from that. Now, I'll give you an example. The Yalloa swamp that is next to Lake Victoria used to have the Sitatunga antelope. To date, the Sitatunga antelopes are no longer there, probably because the Yalloa swamp over the years has been degraded. So as we try to manage and look at ways in which we can solve the issues behind the Yalloa swamp, it is important then to capture this as a value that once used to be there, but is no longer there. This is represented indirectly, it's mapped indirectly onto the earth observation data. That could be the land use, land cover for that wetland in the case of Yalloa swamp. If it's a forest, it will be captured the same. If it's a mosaic of landscapes, then it will be captured as a mosaic of landscapes. So the biophysical assessment here, if we want to discern the ecosystem services indicators for quantification, is the number of different categories of visitors and the various attraction sites they are visiting. There are some particular landscapes that only have one site to be visited. There are other landscapes like national parks that have multiplicity of attraction sites to be visited, and revenues is generated and recorded based on the attraction sites that are being visited. And these are the key indicators for biophysical assessment. The model allows for the segregation of the attraction sites to as many as required. If within a landscape you have 100 of different attraction sites, this model can be able to capture that information. If the attraction site is only one, then this particular model is able to capture that information for assessment. The land use classes considered in this model, like I've just said, you can have forest. If the only landscape within that ecosystem is a forest, the rangelands, wetlands, and all of which are homogeneous land use types. The model also provides for the modeling of mosaic of landscape, like I've said, because we looked at Sudi wetland, which is within a certain national park, and there are quite a number of attraction sites there in southern Sudan. So based on that, then we developed this mosaic landscape to be able to capture all ecosystems or all landscapes that have more than one attraction site, and they are monitored individually and revenues captured per those particular attraction sites. A mosaic landscape, of course, represents an heterogeneous area composed of different land uses or cluster of different ecosystems. So what is economic assessment? The economic assessment that is applied, it's direct market price method, evaluation technique for the monetization of the quantified ecosystem. That is the amount of money that the visitors pay to visit the attraction sites. So the cultural recreation service model would have all these 4 different windows, one for each type of landscape. We have forests, we have wetlands, we have rangelands, and we have a mosaic of landscapes. So if you are dealing with the forest, you'll open the forest window and input the data required. The same would be for wetlands, the same would be for rangelands, and the same would be for the mosaic landscape. So what are the data requirements? Let's move to the next slide and be able to see what are the data requirements for this particular model. So one of the important model data requirements is the attraction site raster. And we have said you can have one that has a mosaic of landscapes, quite a number of ecosystems inside, or an heterogeneous nature of ecosystem. So we can have just one ecosystem, a forest or a wetland that is being visited. Number 2, the annual revenue collected from individual attraction sites in the applicable currency. When you go to the guide, you'll be able to see the nature in which the preparation of the table is done so that the data can be able to load very well. But what is key to note at this stage is that it's a CSV file and not an Excel file. So you have to prepare this particular table having the annual revenues, having the area of attraction sites in a CSV file so that it can be able to load. The area of the attraction site must be in meters squared. This has been demonstrated if you check within the guide that is provided where you downloaded the Colwood model. Number 4 would be the feature area. Like I've said, it's always important to have the shapefile of the landscape which you're assessing so that you can be able to calculate the area. It should be in meters squared. The same case applies to the pixel area. It should be in meters squared. So now we are ready to go to the model demonstration so that we can be able to see the model run and then move to QGIS to visualize the kind of products that we'll be able to get. So we have our cultural recreation and education model. When you open it, it should look like that with forest, wetland, rangelands, and the mosaic landscape in case you find yourself valuing a national park where there are quite a number of ecosystems inside. So we'll do the forest just like we did for biodiversity and carbon sequestration. And the first thing there it says that we load the attraction site raster. These are data sets that I was able to discuss. We browse to the folder where these data sets are. You've been provided with these data sets in the folder that was sent through the Google Drive link, and you should be in a position to also load this data. Like I'm loading, you go to the cultural and recreation model. We're interested in land use land cover for forest Kariba. We load it. Then we load the attraction site attribute table. It only has one value since we are valuing the entire forest, and the site is not partitioned to any other values that we may have. So we load that particular CSV file. As I said, it's a .csv file. So the unique ID attraction site should be similar to the value ID. So if they're listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the same should be for the unique ID attraction site table so that this table can be linked up. The data sets within the attraction site table can be linked up to the attraction site raster to assign these values that give us the cultural recreation and education value for the forest ecosystem. So we go to the attraction site revenue once the table is loaded to pick the expenditures that the tourist incurred while we are visiting this site. And we also put the forest area. And then we input the pixel area, which I said because it's a Landsat is 900. And then we browse to identify the folder where we'd want our files to be saved. Our output data folder. Once that is selected, the model is now ready to run. We give it some time to run so that we can be able to get an output that we can visualize in QGIS. So we just give it a few minutes. So once the model has finished, we should be able to move to QGIS to visualize the product that has been generated. We now come and add our last layer, the cultural, recreation, and education output. As you can see, we have the net carbon sequestration, we have the conservation value raster, the ones that we have been able to run from the previous model. So we go to add layer to the output folder where we stated that our files should go to. We open it and add it there. You close, you can see that the cultural recreation education value raster, it's an indirect mapping raster that has input the value that could have emanated as a result of tourism, as a result of appreciating the nature that we have. And there is a value of 18,000, could be local currency, could be in dollars. So now we have 3 raster data files from our models, the 3 models that we have been able to run today, and also convert these particular files for the purposes of visualization, have the values at landscape level, and be able to appreciate that our forest is not an issue of just timber, not just carbon sequestration, but there's more that comes out of it that normally has our forest well valued. There is a certain report that was done also for natural capital accounting from Ethiopia. I should be able to share that in our discussion so that you can go and read where they were able to undertake natural forest accounting. They did for timber and carbon sequestration. And inside their land degradation neutrality report of 2014-2015, Ethiopia also highlighted the fact that they felt the forest value was underreported. So this tool gives us an opportunity to be able to actually do both direct and indirect mapping so that all the values that emanate from a particular ecosystem services can be visualized and at the same time accounted for in order to have better policy decision making. Thank you for today's lesson and thank you for attending. Goodbye.